A billionaire has just gone on the national news and exposed a $59 trillion market that he knows is secretly buying Bitcoin. So today I want to be explaining what the sovereign wealth funds and the pension funds are doing in the Bitcoin space and how this leads to not only the Bitcoin, but also MicroStrategy endgame.
And that freed up the animal spirits, both here and abroad. Right? I've had conversations with heads of large sovereign wealth funds that said, if America's buying Bitcoin, we're buying Bitcoin. And so you're seeing, like, the snowball is rolling downhill. The one thing that could have held it back some, at least the Bitcoin price, would have been if, Scott Bessent and his team and Congress could have really knocked that deficit from 7% of GDP down towards 3%, which was his.
So we're going to talk about more of the deficit here shortly, but I'm more interested in what Mike Novogratz is now saying about these sovereign wealth funds who are buying Bitcoin. Because this is not just speculation. We can see here another $1 trillion bank, Standard Chartered, also did come out earlier in the week and they said, hey, guys, we are a little bit too bearish. We actually think the true purchasing power points at $500,000 by 2028, and that is because of the government FOMO that we're seeing. Again, we've talked about this. Standard Chartered is openly saying, because these governments, central banks, sovereign wealth funds are quietly buying MicroStrategy, we think we were too bearish. We actually think 500K Bitcoin is likely. So let's also expose a few more of these sovereign wealth funds that have been buying Bitcoin. Again, we showed some of you guys this as well. South Korea's $800 billion pension fund is eyeing direct Bitcoin exposure. This here is a little bit of a fact check. We can see here the pension fund market alone, it is $58.5 trillion in size. This is huge. I think this is much bigger than most people realize it is. Now, the key takeaway I want you guys to get from this video is right here, and I've highlighted it. Have a look at this. 12 governments have increased their exposure to strategy in the first quarter of 2025 alone. So again, this is just 12 governments, because this is pretty interesting because there's actually a lot more than just the government demand for Bitcoin. Okay, these are global governments, but let's not forget we have 14 US state pension funds who are also buying Bitcoin. I love the Bitcoin therapist's tweet here. You can't make this stuff up. You can't. I'm more bullish than I think I have ever been before in my life. 14 pension funds in America are openly saying, we failed you. Yes, there's a retirement crisis. You need Bitcoin to save yourself from the retirement crisis. And they're openly buying MicroStrategy for the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of Americans that they serve with these pension funds. So this is huge. This is massive. But again, the global FOMO around the world, I think, is accelerating. And this is where we start getting into, let's call it a little bit more of the speculative realm of the video. So we can see here, this article by Decrypt says strategy holds 576,000 Bitcoin. In the first quarter, 12 government entities increased their exposure to Bitcoin. Well, let's have a look at how much Bitcoin MicroStrategy actually wants to accumulate and hold. Because right now we can see, if we jump on over to this website, there is 205 publicly traded companies. This is big, this is massive. And let's have a look at all of the publicly traded companies who right now are holding Bitcoin. Because strategy clearly has a lead. I'm going to make the case for why I expect this lead to widen and this gap to widen. I do think it's only a matter of time before strategy continues to accumulate and hoover up more and more Bitcoin, because this is very, very interesting, the amount of global demand I think we're seeing in the Bitcoin space. Because again, it's worth noting that some of these sovereign wealth funds, yes, they're buying MicroStrategy. And there's a great comment in the comment section. Why strategy is not Bitcoin. Has he ever done a proof of reserves? I might do a video breaking down whether Michael Saylor actually holds Bitcoin or not, and whether he holds his private keys. I think that's an interesting topic that people are always interested in. But I think Saylor does have some things. Saylor does have addresses public from memory. But again, we're going to investigate that in another video in the not too distant future. What I do want to look at today is, yes, some pension funds and sovereign wealth funds are buying MicroStrategy, and that's not real Bitcoin. That is true. But other sovereign wealth funds are using all sorts of other ways to accumulate Bitcoin. We can see here Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund is also buying IBIT. So again, this is a different way for these sovereign wealth funds to be putting Bitcoin exposure in their treasury, in their coffers, so to say. Again, some of these guys cannot outright just buy the Bitcoin. This is why, to the comment, Ted's World in the chat, they're talking about buying MicroStrategy, IBIT. But again, like I say in all these videos, I don't think these sovereign wealth funds are buying MicroStrategy for their business intelligence services. No. I think they're buying it for the Bitcoin exposure or the Bitcoin proxy. And what's interesting is these guys, if you think about it what's the best way to frame this on a live stream? From a first principles basis, these sovereign wealth funds buying MicroStrategy gives MicroStrategy the leverage it needs to go and buy more Bitcoin on its balance sheet. So indirectly, these sovereign wealth funds are kind of contributing to the buying of Bitcoin. Because if these sovereign wealth funds were not buying MicroStrategy stocks every time they offer these convertible debt offerings and all of these sneaky and intuitive ways that Michael is using to raise capital and debt to go and buy the Bitcoin, if nobody was buying these products that he was creating, then he wouldn't be able to buy all of the Bitcoin that he is buying. So again, it's a little bit of a roundabout reasoning here. And again, there's only, 70 characters in a YouTube title. I can't necessarily say sovereign wealth funds are indirectly buying Bitcoin through their exposure to MicroStrategy. Anybody keeping up at home will know that that's probably a little bit longer than a 70-character title. But some of these sovereign wealth funds are buying Bitcoin directly, but the majority of them are buying it through this roundabout way, so to say, through MicroStrategy. We're also going to be taking a peep at the MicroStrategy price and the Bitcoin price. Again, we're at all-time highs the other day. Everybody's freaking out a little bit over the most recent, 3 or 4% correction. But let's take a little bit of a peep at where MicroStrategy is. I think right now, MicroStrategy is looking incredibly bullish to me. I don't think there's anything to worry about here with the MicroStrategy price. Again, I always encourage people to zoom out a little bit. The trend for MicroStrategy is clearly up and to the right. But of course, like Bitcoin, is going to do this in a volatile fashion. We can see very clearly here, if we really zoom out, I don't think there's anything to worry about this recent dip. This just looks like a healthy market correction. And today would be a great buying opportunity. I mean, have a look at MicroStrategy. It's incredibly volatile. If we have a look at the total returns, some Bitcoiners in the chat might also join me with some red eyes, and those eyes might fill up with tears, because I know a lot of Bitcoiners who say, God, I wish I just bought the real Bitcoin. I wish I bought MicroStrategy instead of straight Bitcoin, because we can see MSTR is up 4,158% since Michael started buying Bitcoin for them in 2020. But again, what goes up must do so in a volatile fashion. MicroStrategy had an 89% correction in 2022. More recently, we had a 52% correction in the middle of 2024. Right now, we also just had a 55% correction in early 2025. Again, be prepared for volatility, guys. Great returns and the best returns in the world always come with volatility. This is the nature of the beast. This is what we're always going to continue to see. We are going to see volatility. Now, I think something that could contribute to volatility is what I think is going to happen when central banks come to the inevitable realization that Bitcoin is sound money. because I am gonna maybe open up a little bit of a can of worms that might not impress the gold bugs too much on this video, because I think it's interesting. Globally, central banks hold $4 trillion worth of gold, but they only hold $50 billion worth of Bitcoin. But that sounds like it's about to change if we listen to the words of a hedge fund manager just here in a most recent clip that has kind of been breaking the internet, so to say.
Has 11 million years of workers' wages buried in a stone pyramid in Kentucky in gold. That's obviously very antiquated. That's what the pharaohs did 40 centuries ago. I think that'll be transferred into crypto, Bitcoin, over the next.
Let's listen to that number he said at the very beginning of the clip.
US has 11 million years of workers' wages.
The US has 11 million years of workers' wages stored in a pet rock. That's gold. 11 million years. Let's conceptualize that big number and kind of break it down for you guys to show you just how much capital is stored in gold today. So what I want to start by looking at is this is the number of central banks and their gold holdings around the world. This is where the $4 trillion worth of money is divided. America is supposed to be sitting on 8,000 tons of gold. Then we have Germany with 3,000 tons of gold. Italy, 2,000 tons of gold. And of course, we have the wild card, China. China is a country that I've speculated about for a long time, and I genuinely think China is sitting on more than 20,000 metric tons of gold, despite only officially claiming they hold about 2,000 metric tons of gold. Of course, I get to that number by looking at the amount of gold that has been imported and exported in and out of China over the past 25 years. So for those of you who don't know, China actually has export bans on the gold mining companies in the country. They're not allowed to send the gold outside of its borders. They have to sell it to the central bank within the borders of China. So if you look at the amount of gold that's been mined inside China, and if you look at the thousands of metric tons of gold that China has imported over the past 20 years, you can see that many people have made speculations claiming that China is actually sitting on 20,000 metric tons of gold. And what they're going to do is one day announce it to the world. They're going to say, hey, we have 20,000 metric tons of gold. We want to back the Chinese yuan by gold. Okay. This is, of course, speculation for now, but we'll see what happens. So again, let's take a little bit of a peep. This is a cheap little tweet that I popped out this morning. Global government's holdings of Bitcoin is only $50 billion. Global government's holding of gold, $4 trillion. Bitcoin is unpriced by a factor of 100x. There's a 100x gap between what central banks and governments hold in Bitcoin versus gold. Now, I want to make the case that this gap is going to close. We can see here, American ownership. So the little guy like you and I, we already hold more Bitcoin than gold, so to say. 49 million Americans own Bitcoin, and only 36 million of them own gold. This came from a brand new report that I might break down for you guys later in the week. I think it's an interesting one, that is for sure. But let's take a little bit of a peep over here at how much Bitcoin is held by governments. So again, I love this website. We can see 110 public companies own Bitcoin. Now let's take a peep at how many governments. So 12 governments hold Bitcoin. Now again, earlier in the video, we were talking about how many governments hold strategy. So we have 12 governments holding Bitcoin, but let's not forget this quote from the beginning of today's video. In the first quarter, 12 government entities increased their exposure to MicroStrategy. So again, when you start adding these numbers up, things start looking all the more interesting. So we can see governments are holding 527,000 Bitcoin collectively as of the 24th of May, 2025. Let's scroll down and take a little bit of a look at the biggest government holdings. So we can see America is still supposed to be holding 198,000 Bitcoin, assuming that the audit comes in and they do hold all the Bitcoin they claim to hold. China holding 190,000 Bitcoin. The UK, 60,000 Bitcoin. And then this is a little bit interesting, very interesting, don't you think? Ukraine holds 46,000 Bitcoin. Just a little bit of an interesting, fun fact about the small country of Ukraine. that might explain some of the things happening around the world. But let's move on. North Korea holds 13,000 Bitcoin, and Bhutan 11,000, and El Salvador 6,000. So in total, this website here is telling us that in total, governments are holding 1.6 million Bitcoin. Is that correct? Or is that... Let's fact check myself. We got the raw numbers here. That seems high. Okay, I think that number's wrong. Okay, the subtotal is 527,000. So that is the number. It's about $50 billion worth of Bitcoin. That's how much governments hold, and government entities. I wonder if a pension fund counts as a government entity, because we do know that all of these pension funds, these sovereign wealth funds, they're buying Bitcoin, but they're also buying exposure to Bitcoin in any way, shape, or form that they can, whether that be IBIT, like BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, or whether that be MicroStrategy shares, or whether that be shares of the brand new companies that are coming out and announcing Bitcoin treasury strategies. A lot of people do still believe in gold more than Bitcoin. I would be interested, Nabil, why do you believe in gold more than Bitcoin? I've got some interesting comments in the chat that I do think is interesting. The reason why I think a lot of these central banks are going to be forced to move to Bitcoin over gold is purely because with Bitcoin, you can audit the Bitcoin that you hold. You don't need to trust the American Fort Knox to say, look, we've got the gold. Trust me, bro, we have it. This is the beautiful thing about Bitcoin. You can verify on the Bitcoin blockchain your addresses every 10 minutes, and you can know with certainty and 100% faith that the Bitcoin that you hold is yours and it's there on the blockchain. I think this is a massive revolution, so to say, a huge technological innovation when it comes to Bitcoin. And this is just something that gold just simply cannot do. So I hate to say it, but I do kind of think that gold will be obsoleted in a pretty big way moving forward here in the 2020s decade. Who knows how long this obsolescence is going to take? Maybe it happens quicker. Maybe it happens in 10 years. Maybe it happens in 20 years. Maybe it happens in 30 years. I just don't think it's going to take that long. I think it's going to happen much quicker than most people think. I'm more on the accelerationists camp, so to say. I kind of think a lot of this is going to work itself out in the next 5 or 10 years. And that's purely because Bitcoin is a monetary network. And right now, I think we're seeing the biggest players in the space who understand that Bitcoin is a monetary network accumulate Bitcoin in size. Think about it. We got Larry Fink. We got the world's largest pension funds. We got Saudi Arabia's central bank literally printing money to buy 25,000 shares of MicroStrategy. All of the biggest money managers in the world are coming to the realization that they need Bitcoin and they need Bitcoin exposure in any way, shape, or form. And I do just think these things are going to accelerate. Again, 55% of global hedge funds own Bitcoin. That's massive. So many people are not aware that that $5 trillion market is so in deep in Bitcoin as they are today. It's really crazy about it. So I do just think it's only a matter of time before this gap between gold and Bitcoin closes. Again, if you want to front run this gap and actually buy all your Bitcoin now while you can, with the price being about $100,000, I encourage you guys to check out the Bitcoin Well. I think they're the best Bitcoin exchange in the space. And I really like the Bitcoin Well because when you sign up with the Bitcoin Well, you can see this is the dashboard. This is what you're going to see. And they're going to let you use these tokens in the top right-hand corner of the screen to play the Bitcoin wishing well. You can throw your tokens into the wishing well and you can go into the draw to win 1% of a Bitcoin. So whoever can scan that QR code at home the quickest is going to win 388 sats. That's right, it's free Bitcoin. And again, you get the free Bitcoin potentially every single time you buy Bitcoin on the Bitcoin wishing well. So there is a link down below for you guys to check out the Bitcoin Well. Highly recommend you check them out. They also have a service for high net worth institutional Bitcoin buyers. Again, Bitcoin Well is for everyone. They're for retail guys wanting to set up a recurring DCA, or you can buy large amounts of Bitcoin with their Bitcoin Well Infinity program. So as you can see here, If you want to buy Bitcoin over the counter with very tight spreads and low fees, you can book a call with a specialist here. So this here is the calendar of a Bitcoin Well Infinity employee who's going to jump on a video call with you and walk you through the Bitcoin buying process. Again, I get it. Bitcoin's complicated. Some people need their handheld buying their Bitcoin, and I 100% recognize that. And again, here's a solution for you guys if you do want to have your hand held, so to say, through that buying journey. But again, it doesn't matter who you are. Once you've bought your Bitcoin, get it off the exchanges, put it into your own hardware wallet. And when you do that, always make sure you back up your Bitcoin correct. Do not write down your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words on paper. Paper is flimsy. Paper will burn in a fire. You will lose your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words if it's on paper in a flood or a hurricane or under most circumstances. This is why I always encourage you guys to check out the titanium plates from Stampseed. Again, as you can see, these things are crush proof. These things are incredible. I highly recommend you check out what they are making. These are titanium plates. These are not stainless steel. These are titanium. This should be the industry standard when it comes to Bitcoin. There is no second best when it comes to a metal backup storage for your Bitcoin. So again, titanium, superior to stainless steel. And again, you guys can get 15% off anything you want to buy from Stampseed with that promo code Luke15. So all of that is linked down below in the chat. Now let's talk a little bit more about this gold versus Bitcoin crisis unfolding. Actually, here's another crisis. Let's answer John Vito's question. So I'm jet lagged right now. I'm actually in Europe. So I've been living in Latin America for 4 years, and right now I'm chronically de-slept and just arrived in Europe here yesterday. So the eyes are a little bit red. I'm adjusting to the time zone changes. I promise I'm not chewing on the devil's lettuce, so to say. That's not why my eyes are red. Who knows? If they don't clear up in a week, maybe you'd be able to spot a liar on the live stream. But yes, I apologize for the bloodshot eyes. Recovering a little bit from that jet lag. And always recovering from the all right, let's move on here. Now, I think this gap is going to close quicker than most people think. Let me show you a chart that I think helps to explain why we're going to see this gap close much quicker than most people think. It's probably my favorite chart in the Bitcoin space. Okay, here we go. This is the magic right here. So this right here is showing us that I think there's going to be two different adoption curves in Bitcoin. I think we're going to see a medium of exchange adoption curve and a store of value adoption curve. So what do I mean? Well, let me help paint a picture here. So I think that the store of value use case for Bitcoin is going to be adopted first and more rapidly. And that's simply because the big money understand Bitcoin and they're going to adopt it before the rest of the world. Okay. This is why I think we're going to see an exponential increase in those using Bitcoin as a store of value. And in particular, those who control the majority of that $900 trillion of global wealth. These guys are going to naturally adopt Bitcoin quicker than your Uncle Karen, or sorry, your Uncle Bob, or your Auntie Karen or Kate is going to adopt Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, which is the green adoption curve. And this is why I'm super interested in watching this gap close between the $4 trillion of central banks holding gold versus the $50 billion of Bitcoin they hold. There's a massive gap, and I think this imbalance is going to be closed much quicker than most people think. That's just what is going to happen. I don't see any way that this doesn't accelerate in a pretty rapid way. I just think, this is what's going to happen. We're going to see this gap close. Who knows? Like I said earlier in the show, whether this takes a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Again, we shall find out. I think it's going to be interesting to watch this unfold because, again, we could see some pretty interesting things occur along the way. But with all that said, guys, thank you so much. There's 712 of you guys tuning in between Twitter and YouTube. If you do want a little bit more Bitcoin signal and Bitcoin content, got a little bit of an interesting announcement coming up. Got a brand new interview with British Hodl and Peter Dunworth, two most bullish people in Bitcoin, coming in the not too distant future. To prepare you guys for that interview, I released a previous interview that I did with Peter on the channel. You can find that on the channel, posted it yesterday to kind of prepare you guys for the bullishness that you're going to see in this brand new interview. So again, after this stream's finished, I'm going to pop a link to that interview with Peter that I dropped yesterday up on screen somewhere around there. If you click it, you can go watch that interview and get ready for what I think could be the most bullish three-way interview podcast in the Bitcoin space that's going to be dropping in the next couple of days. So with all that said, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. I will see you guys in the next